Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024 Tumwater City Council work session. And I see all council members are present. So with that, we are going to move right into the first agenda item, which is the CDBG prioritization contingencies discussion, and Brad Mudrid will be starting and presenting. Brad, you're not able to unmute? So maybe log out and come back in. And we will wait for a second. So while we're waiting, just a reminder of the council retreat Saturday. So we will be having that this Saturday. And
yeah, that worked.
Okay, perfect. Great. Go ahead, Brad.
I was hoping that was one of my more efficient presentations, actually. So for today's presentation before the City Council, thank you again. My name is Brad Mudrid. I'm the planning manager here at the city. We're to discuss the community development block grant prioritization and contingencies. I'm going to share my screen in the presentation I have. This is a discussion that the council has every 3 years. We're in the cycle now for this year being our year for working through these issues. The intent of today's presentation is to walk you through the guidance on some prioritization for the funding for the community development block grant planning process. I'd like also to ask the council if they could schedule a meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee for late April to hear presentations if the council chooses to follow the RFP process, and then also schedule the City Council consideration of the Budget and Finance Committee's recommendations for their early May. The reason I'm asking for these things to be done is we're on a fairly tight turnaround for this process, but I just want to make sure that it's on the calendar and the council's ready to consider these things. Some background for those members of the City Council who weren't part of the last allocation process in 2021. Pursuant to the interlocal agreement with the other jurisdictions in Thurston County, Tumwater shares an annual CDBG funding on a 3-year rotation with South Thurston County jurisdictions and the City of Lacey. The City of Olympia, has its own entitlement and is not part of that 3-year rotation. We started receiving funds in 2015 and received them every 3 years thereafter. We contract with the Thurston County housing staff to provide for the administration of the funds, and also they run the RFP process and all of that. So essentially, this is actually a good program for us because in terms of staffing and so forth, it's handled through the county and reporting and all of those things. On a 3-year cycle, we issue requests for a proposal for the use of those funds. In past years, those RFPs have been for services and capital projects that benefit low and moderate income persons in designated census tracts. And in 2018 and 2021, the City Council prioritized affordable housing and public service activities and didn't consider applications for public facilities or economic development. Just you can choose to do that if you wish. The exact amount of funding for this year is still being determined through the HUD and through the county. We expect it to be very similar to the 2021 allocation, which was just above $1 million. Typically, out of that amount, the county retains 20% to cover their administrative costs. And then of the total annual funding, so if the total annual funding was $1 million, 15% of that could be allocated towards social services, say for homeless providers or things like that, providing services for affordable housing. And the remainder would be designated for capital projects or economic development activities, public improvements, or public facilities. There are additional rules governing what are eligible capital costs as part of that process. But that's all addressed as part of the application process. A little bit of background on the funding history. In your staff report, I included some information that goes back to 2015 on what was funded. But this is probably a good example of the kinds of projects that have been funded over the years by the city council. Under the services allocation, again, that was 20% of the total. There was funding given to the Boys and Girls Clubs for scholarships, funding for Catholic Community Services for a community kitchen. Senior Services received money for home share, and together received money to support their efforts with the Tumwater Community Schools. In addition to those services fundings, there was capital fundings that was allocated to 5 different projects. Home First was providing affordable rental homes for Tumwater. The Housing Authority had Sequoia Landing Phase 2. They were starting that project. That's the project adjacent to Sequoia Landing 1 on Little Rock. Rebuilding Together Thurston County and Habitat for Humanity had critical home repairs as one of their asks for capital projects. And then Habitat for Humanity also had the buy down for the Tumwater Townhomes project that is in the process of being completed. All of the funds have been expended, were expended. There wasn't an issue with getting the funding out and also the funding spent within the required time frame. There was, however, a part of the discussions in 2021, a contingency built into the process because there was a concern that the Housing Authority for Sequoia Landing Phase 2 was still trying to work through the applicant's purchase of the property. And then there was, if that did not happen, there was explicit contingencies to what would happen to the allocation that was made for that to 2 other projects. So that could be something that could be considered by the city council if they feel that's necessary. The process for doing this is that after the city council determines the parameters for awarding funds for the cycle, Thurston County Public Health and Social Services administers the RFP and the selection process. If an RFP is chosen for some or all the funds, the city council will have to make decisions on how those funds will be allocated. In the past, that is what the city council has done primarily, is go through the RFP process, do the interviews, and then make a decision on how to allocate the funding from there. In the past, it has been done either by the whole council as a whole through a work session or by one of the council committees. Presentations from the applicants typically are required. And again, these are decisions that the city council will need to make in April and May if they choose to go through the RFP process. Ultimately, whatever the city council chooses to do in terms of selecting projects goes to the County Board of Commissioners, who have final authority as they're the legal entity receiving the funds from HUD. And the city's decisions need to be made by late April, early May to allow Thurston County staff to prepare for a public hearing, present the draft plan to the commissioners for approval, and then submit the plan to HUD. There are some options for the city council to consider as part of this process. The first option would be to issue an RFP as the city has done in past years. This RFP would be going out in late February at the same time as the other RFPs for county and regional housing council funding for affordable housing and for homeless services. If the Tumwater wants to identify specific funding prioritizations to include in the RFP, the county has asked that we get those to them by the end of this month. So the county can finalize the application in the RFP, or otherwise it would be open to any eligible CDBG activity. So that's economic development and the full slate of things. The city would also need to specify if services are eligible and to what percentage, up to 15% of the total fund. So that would be another decision to be made by the council. The second option is if this council has a project in mind already and is ready to make one or more allocations without going through the RFP process, that is definitely an option for the council. At this moment, I'm not aware particularly of any things that the council wants to fund entirely without the RFP process, so I'm not going to necessarily suggest that's a good option to follow, but that is available. Or the final option would be a combination of the RFP approach and holding back a certain amount of funds if the council is aware of a project they want to fund without going through the RFP process. The staff recommendation is, given the need for additional housing, as that continues to be our need in the city, and the city council's priority to address affordable housing and homelessness, staff is recommending that 80% of the funds that are at the discretion of the city council be designated for support of capital costs associated with the creation of new low-income housing in Tumwater, with a priority of leveraging additional investment in low-income housing. And I'd recommend that this would be going through the RFP process, but this would be a stipulation as part of the application. The additional staff recommendation is the remainder of the funding would be available for other eligible capital or service expenses up to the maximum allowed by HUD. And Thurston County would issue an RFP to solicit proposals in support of that. For the process for allocation of the funds, again, I just want to recommend that the council schedule the Budget and Finance Committee in the meeting in the second half of April to receive presentations and make recommendations to the full council for consideration at their first meeting in early May. This is the schedule that the county has prepared for the whole process, just to walk you through the whole thing. Tonight's work session, again, we're focusing on prioritization and contingencies, if there are any, for this process. This information in turn will be finalized as part of the RFP instructions and materials on May 9th by the county. Then 2 weeks later, the RFP for that will be issued. In March, there'll be an application workshop for anybody who's interested in applying. And then the RFP itself will close April 5th. The Thurston County staff will take an initial review of the applications for eligibility and risk. So basically, it's just making sure all the applications meet the required minimum requirements. And then we'll receive the applications on April 9th to forward on to the Budget and Finance Committee with any staff comments and or recommendations. We would like to have the council meet on May 7th to make award recommendations. This would then mean that the annual action plan will be posted for public review and public comment begins. There's the public hearing and Board of County Commissioner approval on June 18. And then the conditional award letters are expected to go out at the end of June, with contracts being executed in September and October of this year. So this is a robust schedule, but it's something that we have done before in previous funding cycles. Are there any questions on what I presented?
Yes,
Councilmember
Brad,
Althauser.
Mayor.
One second,
Angela.
Angela. Councilmember Althauser.
Brad, so I have two questions. Is there a time limit on when we have to, like, we get the funds, is there a time limit on when they have to be spent? Like, if we sort of retain, if we look at that 80% for building new units, you know, unless there's a project that's already kind of waiting in the wings, we might strategically retain that for a little bit longer to wait till we have a project that makes a lot of sense. Maybe there is a project waiting in the wings that would be shovel ready, but if there isn't, how long do we sort of have until we would face the unfortunate situation of losing those funds prior to them being utilized on a project?
You know, I apologize, but I don't know necessarily the answer to that question. My concern is that if we do, unless we have a specific project in mind and a specific allocation in mind, I wouldn't necessarily hold anything back. You can set up contingencies, say, for example, if the RFP process goes through and we don't have adequate projects to be funded or something like that. But unless we have a very specific project in mind right now, I'd be hesitant to say, you know, let's hold money aside for the potential that we have something.
And my second question is on that slide that had the 80%, 20% staff recommendation. The 20% said there's a recommendation to do an RFP for those funds, but would that RFP then also coincide with the 80% to see if there's, okay, so an RFP for both buckets, but one bucket would be primarily geared towards low income housing. The other bucket would be more service in general. Okay. Thank you.
I'll go to Councilmember Jefferson, then Councilmember Dalhoff.
Yes, Brad. I met a young man at the Veterans Drug Court when I had went to Olympia. So my question is, the young man asked me, how can we help him? Basically to help with, he does drug treatment, transitional housing. He has one in Olympia. So I told him to contact me, and he contacted me earlier, and I forwarded his email. So now what would be the process for him to request his funds? Does he have to go through that? Or who does he need to contact?
It would be probably likely through the service portion of the RFP.
Okay.
So when the RFP is issued on February 9th, he would be making an application for that. He would have the opportunity to ask questions and when the RFP is issued on February 23rd, there'll be an application workshop with the county staff to walk applicants through that process. But the dates of knowing that the RFP instructions will be coming out and the RFP is issued on February 23rd is a firm date. So if you want to share that information with him and then just follow the county housing authority housing office, process on how they're going to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Brad.
Councilmember Dalhoff.
Thank you, Mayor. Brad, thank you for that. And I agree with the recommendation. It makes sense, right? Because of the need and things that we're seeing and the assignments that we have. The one thing I always go back to is in this process, where can we incorporate elements of like supporting innovative ideas? There's so many things that we go through that it feels like it's the same thing and we're not seeing maybe that the push or the cadence pick up, right? Like housing 3 to 5 years. So is there an opportunity in this process to showcase, highlight, support innovative ideas and also preventative? A lot of times I feel like we're reactive, which makes sense and I get it. Where are we also doing preventative work to minimize the pipeline of people becoming homeless or losing housing?
I think there are two parts to that. On terms of the preventative side, obviously the services side of the RFP is one of the approaches for that. Now, to be really honest, $185,000 as of 2021 is not a lot of money to see a lot of innovation and a lot of big change. So I would probably strongly suggest that the council also pay attention to what's happening at the Regional Housing Council and how to leverage our membership as part of that to look for regional approaches to those kinds of issues, which I think would count for a lot more and have a bigger bang to get at in terms of deciding on criteria and so forth, things for evaluating proposals. The other part of that would probably, in my mind, be having more background work to get and discussing, with the various service providers in the community, what is coming up, we know in terms of funding, and more importantly, start talking with them about approaches or talking with them about ways that we can do things potentially differently. And say, saying we're interested in exploring different options and see what they have in terms of their own experiences and maybe perhaps working with other organizations, say in the Central Puget Sound or so forth, that we can bring down here. So I think it's more of a leveraging these resources that exist outside of us to get at probably what you're looking for.
Okay, I don't want to lose those, right? Because we get so focused, right? The need is so great. And I feel like we need to do both. And so is this an opportunity to really circle back on that and what that looks like? And I feel like Tumwater is in a unique position. We're next to jurisdictions that are twice the size, twice the population, twice, the budget. And I feel like Tumwater has a way to like model the way of like trying different things.
Mhm.
So thank you, Brad.
Councilmember Swarthout.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. That's one of the things I was curious, are we deciding tonight? And I would be curious to hear from Michael and Joan as far as what they're hearing, because I guess we won't be able to make a decision until we see the proposals come in, but I was just curious what they're seeing and would help like recommend or something, so as well.
Councilmember Walthauser.
Thanks. I mean, I agree with everything you said, Leanna. it's an and both, and we need to learn how to walk and chew gum at the same time when it comes to providing services. And the further upstream we look, then the easier our challenge is going to be to meet in the next 5 years. And I think you're right that in the recent years, a lot of resources have been devoted to response more so than prevention. And I think that that is largely a result of having too few resources to address key issues and looking at the problem and looking at the immediate consequence of tomorrow when there's so many people living outside in the wintertime, right? And it's been it's an impossible choice to make of like, do we prevent future harm or do we try to save lives now? Because at the end, it's the same, right? So I totally agree. In terms of regional projects that kind of skew more towards affordability, and what's been issues that have been coming up at the Regional Housing Council, I think that one of the big ones that we are also grappling with here and will continue to grapple with, that is I know is on everyone's radar on this Zoom, is mobile home parks and housing. That's come up at the Regional Housing Council a couple times. That's come up in our backyard here and will continue to, because I think that's a symptom of a situation where you have everyone being priced out and therefore moving down a rung on the housing ladder. So there were people who were in low income units where the rent has gone up so much that now they're the ones who have the resources that can afford the raised rents at a mobile home park. And the people who are on fixed incomes at mobile home parks are now being priced out. So I think that that's one big area that's a question mark that I am certainly very hopeful that the state takes a better, more strategic approach in addressing this year. But I would say that's kind of been the one that's been on the radar for RHC over the past couple meetings that's been a pretty big question mark. That and just all the right-of-way stuff. But right-of-way is more response as opposed to prevention. I don't know if that helped or made things murkier. Probably a little bit of both. But yeah.
I'll go to Councilmember Swarthout, then Councilmember Cathey.
Thank you. I was thinking about the time that we provided together with money that they used to help prevent people from losing, having to be evicted. And so I'm curious if they're still doing something like that, or if they'll even submit something like that. But I appreciate what you're saying about the mobile home parks, because that really is a key focus, not just here, but across the state. And they seem to think that the legislature, that they fixed it last year, and I don't know how they fixed it. So, not fixed it, but just that they provided something that was supposed to help. But I don't know, like in the cases of the people that are at Western Plaza, that helped, would actually help them after the way things have already gone for them. So, but I do appreciate that focus on mobile homes too.
Councilmember Cathey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to add on to that and say that, the mobile home park piece of this can also be tied with what we've had some concern and hope for helping, which is seniors. And so it kind of takes in both of those in the mobile home parks and seniors, and other ways that we can help, like Michael says, people on fixed income, and also the fear of losing their places. It's really hard to be innovative when all of these issues and problems are so prevalent. And so before I would think that we might put together back on at the level we did before, I think we need to know how this program is going, because it's its own program. And, I'd like to know kind of what their different focus, different ones within their program. And then I think the mobile home park and and tied somehow with senior needs and incomes and what we've been talking about doing. So I think we have some good things that are both innovative, certainly would be for the people who got the help, and letting people know we're paying attention to the current needs. Because we've gotten before over the years, and you'll remember this well, Mayor, kind of looked down upon that Tumwater wasn't doing enough, or everybody else was doing more. And I think these are ways that we can show we're doing the best job we can with the amount of resources we have. So I like this process every year, having $1 million to think about.
Yeah, so I would say that it depends on who applies for who responds to the RFP. So
Yeah.
which programs happen. All right, Councilmember Jefferson.
Yes, Mayor. I'm thinking outside the box, like Leah said, and rental assistant comes up a lot, and housing assistant. And I know our former mayor, Pete, he works with an organization where he fixes houses, low income housing. So can we contact them and give them a heads up to say, hey, you might want to apply for this RFP? Or I'm thinking about the Principals Fund also that Councilmember Swarthout is on. Can we involve them in that process? Can it be used to help that organization?
So I would say that we would let everyone know the RFP is out, and who responds and how they respond would kind of be in their court. So, and if it's a criteria. So.
Okay, thank
And
you.
for Councilmember Angela's question about Rebuild Together, which is the program you're talking about that former Mayor Comet is still involved with. They have applied. I think it was the last time around. So I think people stay aware of this, since it's, they know that each jurisdiction gets a chance at it. So yeah, so that's good to talk about, because we've been talking about repairs, senior repairs and handicapped repairs.
Right.
Good deal.
Councilmember Von Holtz.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm excited to be a part of this process for the first time, and my thoughts run in alignment with all of the council members. Yes, mobile home parks, helping seniors out. Also, I'm thinking about not just rental assistance, but there are so many of our community members who are one unexpected bill away from looking at not being able to pay their rent or their mortgage, or and so I'm wondering if there are organizations that help with those unexpected bills so people don't completely fall off. But yeah, I'm really excited about this process.
Yeah, and I might mention too, this is between a combination between social services and capital projects. So yeah, and Together was one who did a lot of that work in the past. So Councilmember Dahl.
Thank you, Mayor. That just reminded me, thank you, Kelly, and everyone else for your comments, because it reminded me when in this process, when we're talking about innovative and like the things I would like to see, if it doesn't fit in, like Brad was saying, like, let's see what happens. Could we parking lot or like not lose those? Because if it comes out, then we can, if there's other services we could do, right? Like the other services we have for like rental assistance, rental utilities, things like that. Utility services, right? If we have those discussions to see where else they could fit in line with our work, so we don't lose that. So like, I'm willing to agree with the consensus of maybe it's not innovative for this, but if something does come up, that we figure out how we can still do that. So thank you.
Councilmember Althauser.
Thanks. Brad, so we're on the 3-year rotation, but I remember a couple of years ago, there was question as to whether this process would even be allowable to continue because Lacey was growing to the point where they could do their own CDBG and then wouldn't have to be part of the 3 jurisdiction agreement to where it rotates. Where does that stand moving forward? Is that a question mark, or is this kind of like our last determinate go before things are kind of thrown up into the air?
I don't exactly know what the status is. I think you're correct, however, with the potential for Lacey seeking to go on their own. But in terms of our current interlocal agreement, this is the structure we have. My suspicion is that we're probably ready to negotiate another interlocal agreement and then figure out what to do for the next cycle in 27.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, could I make a comment on that?
Yes, Councilman Cathy.
Thank you. Michael, I remember that discussion about people going on their own and anticipating, Lacey was anticipating all the way back when I was part of HHSC. And they discovered, I think in the last couple of years, it may have changed now, that if they went on their own, they wouldn't get as much money. And they also would have to do all of the work that the county does. And made a decision at that time that they were not going to do it, that we were all going to stay together because it draws more money for all of us, and let the county still be the agency that qualifies, that brings it all in for us. So that's a good question, because I don't know, I don't remember that they put a time on. We'll see how it goes for however long, but that's definitely been a discussion and be worth finding out.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Agati.
Thank you, Mayor. Brad, are we able to tap into the governor's rapid housing acquisition program?
I guess I'm going to ask if you can repeat the question. Is it regarding the governor's funding potential for?
Yes, for the rapid housing transition acquisition?
Currently, we are doing part of that through what was known as the right-of-way program. There is additional funding that was through that, but I have a suspicion that it's all essentially spent on providing additional housing through that program. So there's always hope again that the legislature could add additional funds to that, but I believe that we've already allocated everything that's been set out so far.
Yeah, this is a completely different program.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Van Holtz.
Brad, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity once these funds are received, is there opportunities to get match grant funds from organizations like Department of Commerce?
I think it's definitely possible to use these funds as match for any other programs that are, the eligibility requirements are met for that. So one of the things that I recall is that we have been using these to sort of as the bucket of funds that are available to fund particular projects in support of getting more funding to actually finish the projects.
So what I'm hearing is everyone's pretty much in agreement of what's been proposed and getting this through the timeline. Is that, am I hearing that correctly? Okay. All right. So Councilmember Cathy.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it might be helpful for, especially for Councilmember Von Holtz and maybe some of us that always don't have the greatest of memory, what some of the things that we did with this under certain things. I mean, it's easy to see what we did with, together or something like that, but like the sewer projects or what we did for that for the Union Gospel Missions housing out on Little Rock Road and stuff. So if we could run through just quickly, if Brad could run through those projects in that upper tier of what we're talking about 80% of our money, it might be helpful to see where we were thinking about what was important.
Let me share the that portion of the staff report. As I'm getting that up, I'm also going to suggest to the council that you add the word seeking innovative approaches to service provision as part of your part of the instructions that are given to the county for the RFP. So hopefully that'll capture some of Councilmember Dahlhoff's interest in doing that. So what I'm sharing, hopefully you can see, if you can't see the screen, let me know. I'm sharing all of the projects, both service and capital from 2018 and 15 and 21. As Councilmember Kathy pointed out, in 2015, we actually had a couple of different sewer related projects that were in support of housing. The Community Action Council was one of them. We also had some community service center improvements as part of that, but there was a significant $500,000 that went into that one sewer project. For Genesis Acres in 2018, that is actually a drug treatment facility on Little Rock Road that we was on a failing septic system that we put money towards. And then we also contributed a sufficient portion to Homes First for purchasing, renovating, and renting affordable rental homes. So there's a pretty big range depending upon what programs are available and what nonprofits are available to administer these in terms of the capital projects.
So Brad, can you send that, maybe email that to the council members, and that way they can have time to review it?
Yeah, that's all part of
It's in the packet.
It's
Okay.
all part of the package.
I thought so, but I just thought maybe it was different. I was having trouble reading it.
Thank you, Brad.
No problem.
So, all right, so I'm hearing consensus with moving forward with the proposed process. All right, so Brad, we will now go to the next item, which is contract with the State Department of Commerce for the 2025 Comprehensive Plan Climate Planning Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item is the third of 3 grants that we have applied for, that we have received notice from Commerce that they have accepted our application. And the funding for this is intended to fund the new climate element, which is a brand new requirement from the state. It is a significant portion of money. They've allocated $500,000 to all jurisdictions to get this work done. Our contract with the state will be for $420,000 of that. There's a provision in the legislation that allows us to hold off $80,000 of that for additional climate work from 25 to 29. We looked at our total scope of work and what we thought we needed, what we needed help with, and we decided we didn't need the full amount, and it would be probably wise to set that additional money aside for later for a different RFP, different allocation. The funding, as I mentioned, will be used primarily for consultant work to help us develop the climate element. As part of that work, we also have to do some climate related work that we'll be updating part of our transportation plan, our land use element, capital facilities plan, and some other the elements. The work on the transportation plan is primarily looking at greenhouse gas reductions and reducing vehicle miles traveled. So I think that will be very helpful paying for a portion of that work as well. We are fortunate that we do have our climate action plan that was adopted, our climate mitigation plan, excuse me, and all the current work that is being done on the county level in coordination with the cities on that to draw from. There are some very specific things that we have to show that we basically have to show more work than we've already done. But the intent again of this grant funding is to be able to have a consultant help us do that work. The request from staff is that the council place this on your consent calendar for the first meeting in February to authorize the mayor to sign the contract. Once the contract is issued, we will proceed with the completing the RFP process and hope to have a consultant underway, hopefully under contract by the end of March. I also want to quickly offer another piece of information. related to the comp plan update, we are having our first community open house next Wednesday in the fire training room and also remotely, 7 to 9 p.m. I just encourage anyone on the council or anyone watching to be interested. We're getting a lot of positive response from that.
Councilmember Dahl.
I just want to clarify that we're going to notice that meeting, right? So we don't violate Open Public Meetings Act.
If more than, yes, or if the council members want to rotate how they attend and keep it under 4 and all that, yes,
I think it has to be under 3.
under 3, okay. We'll work with Karen to figure it out.
Councilmember Swarthout.
Thank you. I was just curious how our own sustainability coordinator, how does this factor in? Because we've got we'll have someone coming in and helping with the study, but I was just curious, since we do have someone in-house, where are they going to be part of this as well?
Yes, let me just offer a couple of things. Alyssa played a very important role in developing the scope of work that's attached to this and outlining all of the tasks that need to be accomplished. Our job in community development is to ensure that she doesn't burn out and doesn't try to do too much. So this is another reason why we would like to have a consultant help with this work. But yes, no, she's definitely deeply involved in this work and also helping us with the how to fit the climate stuff in with everything else that we're doing on the update process.
Councilmember Kathy.
Yes, thank you. Brad, could you be more specific about what this consultant is going to do or how this impacts our goals as a city as being, with the climate action plan and our statement that climate is an emergency? And, some things so those listening or talking about it or me, what's going to happen? What's the nuts and bolts a little bit of it?
So as part of the contracting process, we developed a scope of work, which is attached to the contract, which is part of your packet. The first action that we identified was to engage the community in development of the comp plan update, in the climate element and related updates to other plans and elements. So this is additional funding that's going to help us with our public outreach and as part of the update process, specifically around activities involved in developing the climate element. So that's an important thing. And also part of that process is a deliverable as part of the contract is the public engagement results report, which we will have to submit to Commerce to show what we did and what the results were. The primary focus of this is actually preparing the draft element and the related updates. And that falls into a number of different things. It's reviewing what we currently have, including all the work that we've already done and all the other plans, reviewing the Commerce climate element guidelines, guidance material that has been just updated and re-released at the end of the last year. And also involves engagement and work with the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative Community Advisory Board. So they actually have a meeting scheduled. I'm trying to remember if it's scheduled for April. Alyssa told me this yesterday, and I apologize for not remembering. But we have touch points with the larger groups about how to work with this, both on the community advisory work group, but also with the tech team groups that are working with other jurisdictions on this particular update. One part of that work that we're basically the work that we're required to show as part of the development of the climate element includes the development of a greenhouse gas reduction sub-element. And I'm not going to go through the 20 pages of guidance that the Department of Commerce has released about what that looks like, but it's a very detailed look of our local emission inventory, our vehicle miles traveled and other things to identify specific things and more importantly, sort of draw the connections between what our impacts are now and what any actions or policies that we need to do. We're also going to be needing to develop a climate resilience sub-element. So there's two different big sub-elements there, the greenhouse gas reduction one and the climate resilience one. We're going to take a lot of the work that we did with the hazard mitigation plan that you're going to be talking about next month as the basis for that, but there are additional things that we're going to add on to that. mostly involving our vulnerability assessments and updating some of the other things related to that. Hopefully, we're going to be able to utilize some of the mapping that the University of Washington has done for climate mapping as part of that process. And then also as part of that, we're going to be, it's also the adoption process as part of this. So in terms of, preparing the necessary ordinance, preparing the actual final documents and all that kind of stuff is all part of this process. So it's from start to finish, essentially.
Just like I mentioned, and I don't know which one of our guests it was, but it seems to me in some of this climate stuff, are we going over and over the same things? I mean, I don't know how many years we've been assessing our miles driven and, all of this. It seems, some of this seems repetitive to me. And
I'm not going to necessarily agree with you. This is an editorial, please don't subscribe to the city of Tumwater staff, but this is a statewide requirement for everybody in the state to do. Some of us, fortunately, are ahead of the game. Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater did a lot of this work already. To be honest, we're sort of on the path, but now the state is saying show everything as part of your comprehensive plan update. So I think this supplements a lot of the stuff we do. I kind of share the viewpoint. There's a lot of other things I'd rather be spending money on, affordable housing, et cetera, rather than this. But
okay, thank you, Brad. I appreciate it. I just wanted to know if I was hearing a lot of new stuff here or refining what we've already done.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, Brad, are you attending the planning commission meeting also tonight?
yes, and I'd like to invite Councilmember Von Holtz to attend as well. I know she misses us and we're always welcome her back. Leota, we don't want you.
All right. So any other questions before we go to Mayor City Administrator report? All right.
I have a question about the timeline.
Oh, I think, did Brad already go?
No.
He did. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councilmember Kathy.
The timeline, though, has to do with some of the decisions that would be made here through you, Mayor and Council. And that is, do we only have this about 2.5 week window, or I guess 3 if we push it, to come up with what we want to do? I'm going back to the other thing.
Oh, the CDBG thing?
Yeah, we don't have that much time. What is it that we need to be thinking about or deciding even, and then get it where and to whom? And is this another work session? Is this where do we go from here with this?
I think the intent was to use the discussion at the work session to let the county know the direction. It doesn't require a formal action by the council. As part of this process, we just need to inform the county of what the discussions of the city council have been and the general direction. And then all that would be built into the RFP process. So it's very similar to the process that we had followed in previous years for this. And we're not varying much from what we had done in previous years either. With the exception, I think, of adding emphasis on innovative service provision and that kind of thing.
So we're just saying what buckets we want, and then we will talk again about who we want or what we want to put in them.
Yeah, essentially, we're just defining what kind of projects would qualify for the bucket, meaning affordable housing rather than economic development is the biggest one. And then some parameters around the service provision. And then once the RFP process is through and then applicants are selected, you'll be hearing, first of all, through the Budget and Finance Committee, the applications themselves, presentations, and then the council as a whole will have the opportunity to hear that full recommendation and make a decision.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know what the exact steps were. Thank you.
All right. So with that, we will go to Mayor City Administrator report, and Lisa, I will let you go ahead and start.
Don't have anything for you this evening, council members, other than just a reminder about the retreat this Saturday. If you have any final requests regarding food, please let us know first thing in the morning tomorrow. We're getting everything all wrapped up and really looking forward to spending the day with you all and having Nancy help us through that process. So thank you.
And then I just might mention that next Tuesday is the 5th Tuesday, so you have a week off. You will not have, we won't have a council meeting or work session. It'll be the 5th Tuesday, so we'll get a little bitty break. So if there's nothing else, I will give you back a lot of extra time. And so with that, we will adjourn our meeting and see everyone on Saturday.